The lights flickered once, just once, and then she was gone. No scream. No crowd reaction. No slamming door. Just the echo of our song still humming from the cheap speakers and the faint smell of her lavender perfume in the air. I was still holding one of her earrings in my palm. She had taken it off mid-dance because it was pinching her. I remember that. That, and the fact that her smile didn't reach her eyes. People kept clapping after the song ended, thinking it was part of the moment. Some of our friends laughed. Someone shouted, "Where'd the birthday girl go?" And I just stood there, alone on the floor, holding her earring like it meant something. Like maybe I could rewind time by staring at it hard enough. 37 minutes. That's how long I waited before I even moved. I checked the bathroom. I checked outside. I even peeked under the buffet table like some pathetic clown, hoping she'd crouch down with a surprise or a joke or some wild prank she hadn't warned me about. Her phone was still on the table. Her purse too. But she was gone. Clean gone. By the time I realized the DJ had started playing again, people were already moving on. Dancing. Drinking. Telling stories. It was still her birthday. Still her party. But the guest of honor had just disappeared. I didn't want to make a scene. That was the worst part. I didn't want anyone thinking something was wrong. I smiled. I nodded. I said, she probably had to step out and take a call. I must have said that same sentence 23 times, like a scratched-up tape. But deep down, I knew something wasn't right. Something hadn't been right all evening. Not since she put on that blue dress I'd never seen before. Not since she whispered something into her sister's ear, and they both looked at me and then quickly looked away. Not since she asked for a double gin and tonic and said, "Let's just have fun tonight, no drama, okay?" She never said things like that. Not before this month. Not before the new passwords on her laptop. Not before the 3 weekends away. Not before I found that receipt from the Garden Lounge folded neatly into her jeans, the one from 2 weeks ago, when she told me she was staying overnight at a leadership seminar for work. At exactly 11:09 p.m., the door opened. She walked in barefoot, holding her shoes in one hand and a paper gift bag in the other. Her hair was messy, her lipstick gone. That dress, the one that was tight enough to leave little to the imagination, had a wrinkle across the chest that hadn't been there before. She stopped when she saw me standing there alone at the table, frozen, like a raccoon caught under a porch light. And then she did something that terrified me more than her disappearance. She smiled, like nothing had happened, like she had just stepped outside for some air. Like this was all perfectly normal and I was the unstable one for looking like my entire chest had caved in. And when I asked, my voice barely functioning, "Where were you?" she said, with a blink, "You wouldn't understand. Can we not do this here?" Not even an apology. Not even an attempt. Later that night, while she was in the shower, I opened the paper gift bag she had brought back. Inside was a velvet box. A man's watch. Not mine. Still ticking. Still warm. I didn't sleep that night. I didn't even lie down. I just sat at the edge of the bed like some ghost of a man, staring at the velvet box on my nightstand. Every time I opened it, the same damn watch stared back at me, sleek, expensive, unmistakably masculine. The minute hand glided like it had somewhere better to be, like it was counting down towards something I didn't want to face. And every time I closed it, I hoped it would disappear. It didn't. Marcy emerged from the bathroom humming. I swear she was humming. Hair wrapped in a towel, steam trailing behind her, cheeks pink from the hot water like she'd just come back from a spa retreat. She saw me, paused slightly, then gave me that same tired smile. "You're still up," she said, reaching for lotion like we were just having a normal Thursday night in. I opened the box again and just held it out. She didn't even flinch, just stared at it, blinked a few times, then said, "You went through my things?" That was her response. Not an explanation. Not even a lie. Just indignation that I dared open a paper bag she left on the table at her own birthday party after disappearing for 2 hours. I tried to form words, but they got caught somewhere in the back of my throat. All I managed was a soft, "Whose is it?" She dried her hands. "Delwyn, please. Don't make this into something." I stood up too fast. My knees cracked and my chest felt tight, like I'd forgotten how to breathe. "It is something. You vanished in the middle of a dance, showed up looking like you rolled out of a stranger's car, and now I find this in your bag and you're telling me not to make it into something." She rolled her eyes. I kid you not. She actually rolled her eyes. "It's not what you think." That phrase. That god-awful phrase. I hate how weak it made me feel, because I wanted to believe her. I wanted to think maybe it was some misguided gift from her sister, or something she picked up for a cousin, or some harmless misunderstanding that I could digest with a few deep breaths. But I wasn't born yesterday, and I wasn't that stupid anymore. So I asked again, more calmly this time, "Then tell me what it is." She didn't. She just stood there, arms crossed, wrapped in a towel, refusing to answer. Like I wasn't worth the truth. Like her silence was all I deserved. That's when I left the room. Not to be dramatic, I just couldn't look at her anymore without feeling like the floor was tilting. I sat on the bottom stair for what must have been an hour, staring at the faint dent in the wall from where I once dropped a frame on our 3rd anniversary. I thought about calling my brother. I thought about driving away. But I didn't do either. I stayed, like I always did. In the morning, she made coffee like usual, toasted her usual bread, played her usual podcast. The only unusual thing was that she didn't speak a word to me. Not even a good morning. We sat at the same table we always did. Me with my cracked mug, her with her color-coded planner, both pretending the night before hadn't happened. Then her phone buzzed. She glanced at it and turned it face down so quickly, I felt the jolt in my bones. I don't know what came over me, but I reached across the table and flipped it. She lunged to stop me, but it was too late. I saw it. A message preview. One line. "Last night was unforgettable. I still taste you." The air was gone. Gone from the room, gone from my lungs, gone from my future. She slapped the phone out of my hand. "You had no right." "No right?" I laughed. It came out strangled, like a dying engine. "You abandoned me at your birthday party, Marcy. You walked out in the middle of our dance and came back with someone else's watch in your bag. Now you've gotten texting me like I'm some extra in my own life. And you're telling me I had no right?" She didn't answer. She just stared. Not crying. Not apologizing. Just watching me unravel like it was mildly inconvenient. I stood. "Tell me his name." Silence. "Tell me his name." She picked up her toast. Bit into it. Slowly. Like she had all the time in the world. And then she said, mouth half full, "You're not ready for the truth." And just like that, everything I thought I knew began to rot at the edges. She said I wasn't ready for the truth. Like it was some secret too heavy for my fragile little brain to process. Like I was too soft, too naive, too Delwyn to handle it. And you know what? Maybe I was. But that didn't stop me from needing to know. Needing to understand what the hell happened to the woman I married. The one who used to write dumb puns on sticky notes and leave them in my lunchbox. The one who used to dance barefoot in the living room while I played her favorite old records. Where did she go? That day, she left for work like nothing had happened. She even kissed the top of my head on her way out the door. That stung more than if she'd slapped me. I just sat at the kitchen table, still in my worn pajama pants, staring at her untouched cup of coffee across from mine. That one little message from the night before, it echoed in my head on a loop. "I still taste you." It made me sick. I actually had to run to the bathroom and sit on the edge of the tub just to stop my hands from shaking. I didn't want to be the guy who snooped. I really didn't. But I also didn't want to be the guy who got played like a fool while pretending not to notice the water rising. So I did something I never thought I'd do. I opened her laptop. It was there on the counter, right where she always left it. She wasn't expecting me to look. That was her first mistake. Password? Still her childhood cat's name. She must have assumed I forgot it. I hadn't. What I found wasn't just text or emails. It was organized. Organized. Folders labeled by months. Hidden beneath a boring file called Tax Docs 2023. Inside were photos, videos, screenshots, receipts. She documented everything. At first, I didn't recognize the man in the pictures. Tall, athletic build, salt and pepper beard, smug smirk in every frame. Some of the photos were taken in dim hotel rooms, others in restaurants I'd never been to with her, and a few, God help me, right here in our house. The worst was a blurry selfie of the two of them kissing in our backyard under the string lights I put up myself for our anniversary dinner. I could tell it was during one of those weekends she told me she was visiting her aunt for mental health space. What a joke. I wanted to stop looking, but I couldn't. It was like watching a train derail in slow motion, and I needed to know how many cars went off the rails. In one of the videos, he was laughing, saying something about how clueless Delwyn probably is right now. And Marcy, she just snorted and said, "He still thinks I'm going through a phase." A phase. That's what she called our marriage. 11 years. A phase. I slammed the laptop shut so hard it echoed through the house. My chest hurt. I wasn't just heartbroken, I was humiliated. Used. Rewritten out of my own story. And I knew I couldn't pretend anymore. I called her. She didn't answer. I didn't leave a message. She came home later than usual that night. Her makeup was done in a way she hadn't worn for me in years. Hair curled. Heels too high for a normal workday. She waltzed in like everything was normal, like I hadn't just spent 6 hours realizing she'd been living a double life. I didn't yell. I didn't cry. I simply asked, "Who is he?" She stopped at the doorway to the kitchen, her keys still in her hand. She looked at me with this expression, equal parts pity and irritation. "He's someone who sees me," she said quietly. "He listens. He makes me feel real." That's when I laughed. Not because it was funny, but because the alternative was screaming into a pillow until my throat gave out. "I saw you," I said, standing now. "I gave you everything I had, and I saw all of you, even the parts you didn't want me to. I just didn't realize you'd rather be invisible to me than real with me." She didn't say a word, just turned her back and walked upstairs. That was it. No apology. No regret. Just a quiet retreat into the bedroom where I knew she'd shut the door and pretend none of this existed. But I didn't sleep that night either. I sat at the kitchen table and pulled the velvet box back out. I stared at that stranger's watch, ticking away like a countdown to something I hadn't yet figured out. I wasn't ready for the truth? No. I was ready for more than that. I was ready for answers. And I was finally ready to find him. I didn't have a plan. I didn't even know what I was looking for exactly, just that I had to find him. The man behind the texts. The one with the watch. The one who apparently saw her, listened to her, and made her feel real, whatever the hell that meant. All I had was a smug face burned into my brain from those photos, and a quiet fury building behind my ribs like a pressure cooker without a valve. The first breadcrumb came from an invoice saved in one of her hidden folders. It was for a luxury car detailing service. His name was listed at the top, Lyle Connors. I remember repeating it under my breath, like I was trying to conjure him. Lyle. It sounded like the kind of name that wore expensive cologne and used words like networking circle without flinching. A quick online search brought up his LinkedIn profile. Founder of a boutique consulting firm downtown. Married once, divorced now. No kids. Age, 47. I found an old photo of him at a Chamber of Commerce fundraiser, smiling like the world owed him nothing but good fortune. I wanted to punch the screen. The next morning, I took personal time off work and drove down to his office building. I didn't even know what I was going to do, march in and demand answers? Spy from the parking lot? I brought nothing but a growing list of questions and the sick feeling that I'd officially lost control of my own life. I parked across the street and watched for 2 hours. Nothing. Then, right before noon, he walked out. Tall, smooth, stupidly confident. Blue blazer, designer sunglasses, AirPods in. And walking beside him, my wife, Marcy, smiling like a teenager skipping class. She laughed at something he said, and then, right there on the sidewalk, they kissed. Not a quick peck. Not something subtle. A long, slow, romantic kiss in the middle of the street, in broad daylight, like they were the stars of their own twisted movie and the world was their audience. I don't know how long I sat there gripping the steering wheel. Maybe 10 minutes. Maybe 30. I just remember blinking back tears and realizing that everything I thought we were trying to fix was never meant to be fixed. She didn't want to repair us. She wanted to replace us. She already had. I followed them. Yeah, I know. It sounds desperate, and maybe it was. But I couldn't stop myself. I trailed them through downtown, far enough back not to be seen, watching them browse shops, get smoothies, laugh like they were on vacation. At one point, she pulled out her phone and took a selfie with him, and he made a goofy face while she kissed his cheek. I wondered if she'd save that in another secret folder called Memories while deleting all our wedding photos like they were typos. Eventually, they went into a boutique hotel. I watched from the parking lot as the door closed behind them. My stomach twisted. I knew what was happening, and I still couldn't move. I just sat in my car, gripping the steering wheel like it was the last thing tying me to reality. I don't know what hurt more, that she was with him, or that she hadn't even tried to hide it anymore. She used to be so careful, so secretive. Now it was like I didn't exist, like I'd been edited out of the story. She went from slow dancing with me at her birthday to making out with another man in public within 48 hours. And I didn't even get a chapter break. I finally drove home sometime after dark. When I walked in, the lights were off. Her car was already in the driveway. She'd beaten me home. I stepped inside and found her on the couch in her robe, scrolling through her phone like it had been just another boring Tuesday. She looked up casually. "You okay?" she asked, like nothing had happened. I stood there, just inside the doorway, soaked in street lamp light and shame. "I saw you," I said. Downtown. With him. She froze. I watched her blink. Once, twice, like she was calculating what lie to feed me. But she didn't say a word. You kissed him in front of everyone, I continued. You spent the day with him like I didn't exist. You brought him into our life, Marcy. Into my world. And now you act like I'm the intruder. She set her phone down, very slowly. I was going to tell you, she said. When? I snapped. After I moved out? After you changed the locks? After he wore my shoes and slept in my bed? Her voice barely rose above a whisper. I didn't want you to find out like that. And how was I supposed to find out then? I asked, my throat tightening. With a note on the fridge? A wedding invitation. She stood, finally, and walked over to me. You were never supposed to follow me. That sentence punched me harder than anything else she could have said. She wasn't sorry I saw it. She was sorry she got caught. I stepped back, refusing to let her touch me. For the first time, I felt something snap, not violently, not loudly. Just a final, clean break. Like when a string finally pulls too tight and goes silent. You made your choice, I whispered. And I walked out. But the thing is, she wasn't done yet. I thought walking out would be the moment everything ended. That maybe I'd feel some kind of twisted victory by finally reclaiming control, by choosing to leave before I was left again. But the truth is, I didn't walk out of anything. Not really. I just walked into a storm I hadn't seen coming, and Marcy, she wasn't done rewriting the script. That night, I drove aimlessly. My phone buzzed twice. Both from her. I didn't read them. I ended up at a 24-hour laundromat I hadn't been to in years. I sat in the back corner, next to a humming dryer, trying to convince myself that I hadn't just watched the woman I loved erase me in real time. But no amount of self-pity could numb what came next. When I finally got back home near dawn, something felt off. The porch light was on, which we never used unless we had guests. I opened the front door slowly, already bracing for something. There, right on the dining room table, was a small stack of papers, held together by a pin stabbed through the top corner like a knife in a message board. And above it all, a card. In her handwriting. You deserve better. I opened the envelope. Inside were divorce papers. Signed. She'd pre-signed everything. Filled out the sections about assets, left notes on some margins suggesting what I should keep to make things easier, and scribbled, "I'm sorry it came to this," in the bottom right corner of the last page. I stood there for several minutes, not even reading, just staring at the way she curled her lowercase g's like hearts. As if that made it tender. As if that made it hurt less. I walked upstairs and saw that her closet was half empty. A suitcase was missing. Her pillow was gone. I checked the bathroom, half the drawers cleaned out. Only my things left. Toothbrush holder with one brush. One towel on the rack. The ghost of a shared life stripped in under an hour. She didn't run away in shame. No. She planned this. Efficiently. Like a surgeon cutting out what she no longer needed. Like me. That night I didn't cry. I just sat on the floor in the hallway, back against the wall, staring at the framed photo of us at Cannon Beach. She was leaning into me, laughing, hair blown sideways by the wind. That smile wasn't fake. I know it wasn't. But maybe it meant less to her than it did to me. Or maybe it died sometime I didn't notice. I tried to sleep, but my body wouldn't let me. It kept jerking awake every time my eyes closed, like my mind was refusing to let go of what had happened. So I made a mistake. I opened the texts. Her first message had read, "Delwyn, please don't make this harder than it is. We've been unraveling for a long time." Her second, "I'll give you space. I'll be at Lyle's for a while. If you need anything, ask through the lawyer. I really am sorry. Lyle's." Of course. She moved in with him like she'd been rehearsing it for weeks. Maybe months. I pictured him handing her a key with that smug smile, offering a glass of wine while she laughed and hung up her coat like a woman starting a fresh chapter. I should have been angry. I should have wanted revenge. But all I felt was this hollow, pulsing ache. Like a missing limb. Like I had no idea what to do with my own hands anymore because they weren't holding hers. Then, 2 days later, it got worse. A knock on the door. Mid-morning. I hadn't showered. I hadn't changed clothes. I opened it expecting some kind of delivery. But it was a woman. Mid-50s maybe, dressed neatly in a forest green coat, clipboard in hand. Behind her, parked in the street, was a car I didn't recognize. "Mr. Heath," she asked, using my last name like it still belonged to someone functional. I nodded. "I'm with Sanderson and Lee Property Management. I believe there's been a transfer filed for this residence. I'm here for the walkthrough. Marcy Connors submitted the documents 3 days ago. You were listed as co-signer but not primary. There's been a title reassignment. I froze. She continued, politely but coldly, this home is no longer in your name. It was transferred to a private trust associated with Lyle Connors. I was told to inform you that occupancy needs to end within the next 30 days. My mouth opened. Nothing came out. I felt the floor tip beneath me. Marcy didn't just leave. She took the house. I didn't even know that was legally possible. But she had somehow rerouted everything behind my back. The property was always under her name first. We bought it before we got married, and she was the one with the bigger income at the time. I never thought she'd use that detail as a weapon. But she did. Quietly. Precisely. The woman handed me a card and left without waiting for questions. I stood in the doorway long after her card disappeared down the road. And that was the moment I realized this wasn't about love anymore. This was war. But it wouldn't be fought with fists or screaming matches. It would be fought with silence, signatures, and secrets I hadn't uncovered yet. I didn't know what to do with the card the woman left me. I held it in my hand for hours, flipping it over, rubbing the embossed lettering like it would give me answers. Sanderson and Lee Property Management. A phone number. A sterile office address. My name wasn't on any of it. It hit me slowly. Marcy had been planning this move long before that birthday party. She didn't just walk away from our marriage. She built a trap and waited for me to walk into it barefoot. That night, I searched everything. Bank accounts, tax documents, insurance policies. I don't even know what I expected to find. Maybe a paper trail leading back to some rational explanation, some breadcrumbs she'd forgotten to hide. But what I found was worse. The joint account we'd used for years had been drained down to $72.13. Gone. All of it. I checked the withdrawal logs. A slow bleed of transfers over the last 6 months, each small enough not to trigger alerts, just frequent enough to empty everything without me noticing. I traced them back to a new account under her name only, one I hadn't known existed. There were names in the logs I didn't recognize. One was a company, Ellington Advisory Trust. I looked it up. It wasn't even a real trust. It was a shell company owned by Lyle. A place where Marcy had quietly rerouted our money. My money. Savings I'd contributed to since we got married. Birthday gifts I bought for her family. Groceries. House repairs. Gas for her car. All of it had been siphoned, processed, and swallowed by a man I hadn't even met in person. I sat in the dark staring at the monitor, reading and rereading every entry until the screen blurred. This wasn't just cheating. It was calculated removal. A surgical erasure of my name from everything we built together. One paper at a time. The next morning, I made an appointment with a lawyer. I'd never even spoken to a lawyer before that. Never thought I'd need one. I felt ridiculous walking into the office, clutching a manila folder of printed screenshots and statements like some nervous intern presenting a bad group project. But the moment I sat across from the woman, her name was Valerie Harkness, I broke. Not loudly. Not dramatically. Just quietly, piece by piece. She read through the folder in silence, occasionally glancing at me with a kind of professional pity that somehow didn't make me feel worse. When she finally spoke, her tone was calm but direct. She's been preparing this for over a year, Mr. Heath. I nodded slowly, swallowing the rock in my throat. Why? Valerie leaned back. Because she could. Because she had access. Because the laws in this state are friendly to whoever files first and keeps records. Because she counted on you not looking until it was too late. I stared at the wall behind her. I didn't even want revenge. I just wanted to understand how someone I'd held every night for a decade could build an escape hatch in secret, climb out, and then board up the exit behind her. Valerie tapped her pen thoughtfully. There's one option. We could file for injunctive relief. Challenge the property transfer. But it depends on proving malicious intent or fraud. Is draining our savings malicious enough? I asked, my voice cracking. She gave a tight smile. It's a start. For the next 2 weeks, my life became a blur of signatures, notary stamps, document scans, and late-night searches through old emails and records. Every day brought a new little wound, another reminder of how much she'd hidden right under my nose. Old messages to Lyle, plans for vacations I never knew she took, purchases of lingerie I never saw her wear. One night, while organizing digital files, I found a folder deep inside an old backup drive labeled Wellspring. It was encrypted. Took me 3 hours to figure out the password. Inside were recordings. Audio. Dozens of them. Most were short, but one was over an hour long. Dated 2 months before her birthday. I hit play. It was Marcy. Talking. Not to Lyle. To someone else. A woman. I need this done by July, she said. He's not going to see it coming. He thinks we're in a rough patch, but he's so easy to distract. I leave a sandwich on the table and he melts. He wants to save something that doesn't exist anymore. I want out. Quietly. The woman on the other end asked something I couldn't make out. Marcy laughed. No, he won't fight me. He doesn't have it in him. He'll probably apologize for getting hurt. And she was right. That line hit me harder than anything else. Because it was true. I hadn't fought. I hadn't screamed. I hadn't demanded anything. I'd apologized for breaking. For being confused. For not seeing it sooner. I had become the version of me she expected, passive, lost, manageable. I copied the audio. Saved it to every cloud service I had. Sent it to Valerie. And the next morning, as I walked out of the courthouse after submitting our petition to freeze the property transfer, I got a text from Marcy. Just one sentence. We need to talk. You're making a mistake. I didn't reply. Because I had finally, painfully realized something. The mistake had already happened. She made it. And now she was afraid I wouldn't just disappear like she hoped. I didn't respond to her message. Not out of pride, but because I knew if I opened the door, even a little, she'd push it wide open again and slip through like nothing had happened. But it didn't matter. That night, just after 10, I heard her car pull into the driveway. I didn't go to the window. I didn't even move. I just sat on the living room couch, lights off, watching the reflection of the street light across the hardwood floor. A soft knock came. Then another. I didn't answer. Eventually, she let herself in with the key she still hadn't returned. The door creaked open, and I heard her shoes cross the threshold, slow, careful steps like she was entering a stranger's home. She didn't say my name. She didn't call out. She just stood there in the entryway while I stared ahead at the dark television screen. I didn't come to fight, she said quietly. I said nothing. Her voice trailed off. I didn't expect you to go this far. I turned my head slowly. You mean not rolling over like usual? That stung her. I saw it in the way her jaw tensed. I didn't do this to hurt you, she said. I laughed under my breath. You siphoned our savings, erased my name off the deed, and handed our life to a man who wears loafers without socks. But no, sure, let's pretend this was an act of mercy. She stepped further in, hesitant, like someone approaching an animal she wasn't sure was dead. You weren't present, Delwyn. You stopped being my partner a long time ago. I was lonely. And you fixed that by planning a financial ambush? I stood now, slowly, my voice shaking but louder than it had been in weeks. You didn't just cheat. You rewrote our history. You planned your exit like a hostile takeover. And the worst part? You thought I'd just take it. She didn't answer right away. Her silence was the only honest thing she'd given me in months. Finally, she whispered, you don't understand what it's like to feel invisible. Invisible? I snapped. Marcy, I built my life around you. I remembered the dates you forgot. I backed out of job opportunities because you didn't want to move. I stayed quiet when you rolled your eyes at me in front of your friends. And I still came home with your favorite damn coffee every Friday because I hoped it would make you smile. And you're telling me you felt invisible? She wiped at her eyes, but no tears came. I came tonight because Lyle wants me to close this cleanly, she said. He thinks you're going to embarrass yourself if this goes public. The recordings, the documents, he says it'll ruin you. There it was. The threat, not even thinly veiled. I nodded slowly. So he sent you to try and smooth me over? Is that it? Her expression softened. Delwyn, you're not built for this kind of fight. I know you. I know you want peace. I took a step forward. You don't know me anymore. We stood in the silence, just feet apart, surrounded by the ruins of a home that had once held Sunday pancakes, anniversary dinners, quiet kisses in the hallway. Now it was a battlefield. And I wasn't the same man who used to whisper apologies after every disagreement just to keep the air calm. Then she said something I wasn't prepared for. I'm pregnant. My chest collapsed inward. Time stopped. The room didn't move. The walls didn't breathe. Nothing made sense. I thought you should know, she said, her voice steady now. It's his. We're keeping it. I couldn't speak. I sat down slowly, feeling the air thicken like glue around me. The floor wasn't steady anymore. My mind screamed, but my mouth couldn't form words. She took that as her cue to go. She turned, walked to the door, paused briefly like she might say something human. But she didn't. She left. And the second the door clicked shut, I collapsed. Not from the news. Not even from the betrayal. But from the horrifying realization that the woman I once built my life around had already started building a new one. One that didn't have a place for me in it. One where I wasn't a cautionary tale or a memory or even a footnote. I was nothing. But that night, as I lay curled on the floor, I remembered something my lawyer had said that I hadn't fully understood until now. People like her don't come back to apologize. They come back to control the ending. I had one part left to play, and I would write the final chapter on my terms. I didn't sleep after she left. I just laid there on the hardwood floor, staring up at the ceiling fan turning slowly above me. I must have counted the blades 100 times. Pregnant. With his child. It kept looping in my head like a broken reel. And yet, even in the lowest moment of my life, something unexpected began to creep in. Not anger, not even sadness. Clarity. This wasn't about saving a marriage anymore. It wasn't even about loss. It was about release. For weeks, I had been clinging to the rubble of something that didn't exist, holding my breath in a house that had already been evacuated. She hadn't just left me, she had dismantled me piece by piece. But somewhere between the recordings, the silence, the threats, and now her final admission, I had been forged into someone else. Someone I never thought I could be. Someone who wasn't afraid of letting go anymore. The next morning, I called Valerie, my lawyer, and gave her the green light. Full pursuit, I said. All the way. Her tone shifted immediately. No hesitation. She had been waiting for me to say those words. We filed a countersuit not just for financial damages, but to contest the property transfer entirely on the grounds of concealed marital assets and fraudulent misrepresentation. I gave her everything, the files, the recordings, the call logs, the timeline, every thread I had gathered. And for once, the truth was on my side. Weeks passed, then a month. Marcy didn't contact me again. Not directly, but her lawyer did. First came the denial, then bargaining, then silence. Apparently, Al didn't appreciate the heat once legal scrutiny turned toward him. His shell company began unraveling under pressure. I learned he wasn't the business genius he pretended to be, more like a smoke and mirrors type who had used women like Marcy before. But this time, it wasn't going to be so clean. Meanwhile, something unexpected began to happen. I started rebuilding. Not just legally, but personally. I moved into a small rental across town. Quiet street, nothing fancy, but it felt like mine. I bought a second-hand couch. Hung my own pictures on the walls. Cooked for myself. No judgment, no side eyes, no walking on eggshells. For the first time in years, I heard myself think, and I didn't hate the sound. I started seeing a therapist. Her name was Alina. Kind, blunt, no nonsense. She didn't coddle me, didn't feed me pity. She made me look in the mirror. Forced me to face all the years I let myself shrink to fit someone else's life. And you know what? That hurt more than the betrayal. Realizing I'd spent years surviving instead of living. But then one Thursday morning, I got the call. Valerie's voice was calm but victorious. The court ruled in our favor. The property transfer is reversed. The assets are being frozen for reassessment. You have legal control again. I didn't cheer. I didn't even smile right away. I just closed my eyes and whispered, "Thank you." And in that moment, the weight lifted. A few days later, I walked through the old house one final time. Empty now. Quiet. Echoes of what used to be. But it didn't hurt the way I thought it would. The space felt like a shell, no longer sacred, no longer mine. I left the keys on the counter, locked the door, and didn't look back. Instead, I walked towards something new. 6 months later, I've started fresh. I joined a writing group, just a handful of people who meet in a coffee shop on Wednesdays and read stories that would never make it into a bestseller list. But I love it. Turns out I have things to say. Stories to tell. Pieces of myself I never knew were still alive beneath the wreckage. I don't know what Marcy's doing now. Maybe she's still with Lyle. Maybe not. I don't care. That chapter's closed. Her silence, her cruelty, her manipulation, it doesn't own me anymore. And the best part? I'm not bitter. I'm not broken. I'm free. Sometimes healing doesn't come with a grand moment or a cinematic finale. Sometimes it comes in the quiet. In the way your hands stop shaking when you sign a lease with your own name. In the first time you laugh without flinching. In waking up one morning and realizing you're not angry anymore. You're just alive. I thought I lost everything. But in the end, I found myself. And for the first time in years, that's enough.